CQ POTA, CQ Parks on the air. Whiskey 1 Delta Echo Delta.
Kilo Delta 4, Whiskey India.
Kilo Delta 4, Whiskey India 5x9 at Kilo 8291.
Roger, got you 57 Virginia, Victor Alpha this morning.
Thank you for 57 into Virginia 73, QRZ Whiskey 1 Delta Echo Delta.
Hello, my name is K.Thomas, Whiskey 1 Delta Echo Delta. Today I'm honored to have with me Jason Johnston, the president and founder of Parks on the Air. Parks on the Air is the wildly successful amateur radio program that encourages portable operations in state and national parks, not only in North America, US and Canada, but also worldwide, and they're expanding every day. They've counted over 325,000 participants in their program since they started in 2017, and just this year they've increased activators by nearly 50% and year-over-year hunters by about 33%. When I reached out to Jason to ask if he'd be interviewed, he told me he doesn't do interviews, at least very few. So for that reason, I'm very privileged that he's joining me today from his home in Maryland. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate having me on and talking about the program. It's exciting.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know that you have a full-time job in addition to the huge responsibility that must come with Parks in the Air. You have a family, so thanks for taking the time to do this. We're actually recording this at 8 o'clock on a Monday night, and I know a lot of people are curled up in the corner at this point, so thank you.
Oh, no problem. I know how it goes. I'm just excited to be able to get the word out on everything that's going on. And
well, so just set the stage here, a little bit about myself. I got back into the hobby a few months ago after a several decade break. And when I turned my Kenwood on after getting relicensed, I mean, a lot had remained the same. There was the DX group, there was the contesting group, CW, obviously single sideband, RIDI. But there were a lot of new things going on also, like FT8. But the thing that really caught my attention were these people calling CQ POTA, and I had no idea what this was about. Back in 1978, 1979, when I was in the hobby, there certainly was nothing remotely like Parks on the Air. So I was intrigued. I started responding to the calls and started reading up whatever I could, and then I jumped in with both feet. And I think to date I've activated about 57 unique parks, made about I don't know, maybe 1,000 parks that I've hunted, and I can't get enough of it. It's been a blast. But I've also, along the way, just had a lot of questions that I haven't necessarily been able to get answers to. So I'm hopeful to get into some of that today.
sounds great.
So let's start.
Ask away.
Where did this all begin, Jason? I've heard rumors that there was a national parks program with ARRL, and maybe this was an offshoot from that, but I've never really had that confirmed. Tell me where this idea, what the genesis was.
Well, I haven't been licensed ham for that long either. My initial license was 2014, and at the time I was moving and bought a house underappraised, and we already sold ours, so we were kind of in limbo. And so I started out with a KX3 was my first radio, which you might know the Elecraft KX3 is an extremely portable one. And then the Alex loop antenna, small magnetic loop, was my first antenna that I got to use. And I was living in an apartment. So my first DX was sitting in there doing Ukraine at nighttime on 20 meters, surprisingly with my antenna inside the apartment and it actually working on voice, which is just amazed me. So I got into SOTA in 2015. And it was a rage. It was a blast. It was awesome. And then the ARRL, like you mentioned, started the National Parks in the Air system in 2016. And from the get-go, I had a blast with it. I started on January the 1st on New Year's Day, activated a park and activated several, at least I think it was in the 50, 60 range. And then also, like you said, hunted lots of contacts that year. But unfortunately, it was just a year-long event. And it was so successful to me, and there was already like a sense of community and camaraderie that in 2016, I would say this about March or April area, I reached out to Sean KX9X, who was instrumental in building that program for the ARRL, as well as Norm Fusaro, W3IZ. I reached out to Sean, and is the ARRL going to continue the program past 2016? Because I noticed there's a deadline, and he said, unfortunately, no. And I said, well, is there any way? Because obviously it's extremely successful. And he stated that they did not have the budget at the time to do that. And I was a bit surprised because, on one hand, because they did so many different programs, like the Centennial, if you remember. I'm not sure if you were around for the Centennial around that time. It was a big program they did. They had like different bands and different modes. ARRL had all these stations everywhere. It was in 2015, I believe. And then 2016 was their National Parks in the Air. Then the next year after that, they did a Grid Square program. So they were used to doing these new programs every year. But sadly, even after the Grid Square, I think they stopped doing all programs that were like extracurricular activities. But anyway, after National Parks in the Air, we since he stated they didn't have the budget to go forward with it, I thought, well, it'd be a shame to not have this go. There's got to be a way to keep this going. So I reached out to a lot of us in America that were already, doing this. Tom Martin, W1DED was one of the first ones that saw the need to keep the National Parks on the Air program, going as much as we can, as well as Vance Martin, N3VEM, and Mike Case, W8MSC. They were the first three in the first core group, along with Tom's wife, Julie. At the time, she was K8VOX. Now she's WT8J. But they were the initial core group to get things rolling. And then we added Jeremy Turner, November 0AW, Alpha Whiskey, and Colby Dillian, Whiskey Radio 5 Bravo. With them, they make the core team as it is today, with some leads that we've added over the years to extend it to a more of an international thing. But with National Parks in the Air, it was successful, but also saw the issue of accessibility. And I found that with SOTA. SOTA was tough because you sometimes have to worry about private property. And that was one thing with POTA I didn't want to have to worry about. So this is why we make it always on public property only.
Let's go back to this core group, because I'm really intrigued by that. I mean, you mentioned a number of men and women that form that core group. What was their contribution? I guess I'm really curious. What did you do? What did you need to do to create this program? Was it a lot of software development? Was it getting the word out? A little bit of marketing? What was that?
Initially, it was the technical back end had to be addressed. At first, I was going to be, and this is going to sound crazy to you, I know, but this is no joke, and you can ask Tom, W8TAM, but I told him I'd be happy if we just started this out with 30 people doing paper logs and, just me and my friends exchanging some free certificates, and that's all it was. I was initially thinking that this is just going to be paper. And then when we were talking about the nebulous of the forming of this, someone said, well, I've got in my basement, I could, house some servers. We could set up a rack. And this is kind of old wave of school of thinking, because I'm the same way. I grew up using Dell racks with, units of stacking servers and depending on power backups and things like that. But nowadays it's a whole different scenario with cloud computing. So we talked a lot about the back end, what we could and couldn't do. And I knew I needed someone to help with the logging. Mike Case was already doing a successful program, the Michigan Parks on the Air, back in 2018. This was 2016, 2017, 2018 area, as well as the ARRL. So there was a state-run program simultaneously working with the at the same time that the National Parks in the Air, Michigan Parks in the Air had their own system. And Mike Case, W8MSC, he developed that parser to do the logging. So that was already a piece that I knew that he was successful, that could be used for what we were trying to do. And then I also needed someone to do a lot of the PHP Python language that was needed for the coding. And that's where Vance Martin, N3VEM, came into play. And with the code within Mike's parser, that's what started our first site was called POTA.us. It was the original site that we used, and it was pretty much United States centric. We just wanted to keep the state. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back a little bit. The state parks were something that I thought were important to include with the national parks, and as well, I thought, well, if it's just scalability, why not do it for the world? If it works for the United States, as long as we keep it the successful system in the same format and just accept prefectures for Japan and provinces for Canada, etc., voivodeships for Poland, we can expand it to everything. Just use the same type of system. So that's why you're going to start seeing a lot of more awards coming for all these countries that are in the same kind of format that we did for the United States, but they're all in Latin for everyone in the world to have the same uniform look, and that's what we're going for with that. But
one of the things I want to point out, I've mentioned this to you in a prior conversation, the interface that we see with parksontheair.com is pretty amazing and somewhat unusual in ham radio, unfortunately. It's intuitive, it feels good to use, which I think is part of the attraction for me. I don't have to spend a lot of time figuring out the interface and understanding how to kind of get the job done. So congrats. I mean that's really a job well done.
It's not me. It's definitely back to when we set up the AWS is when Jeremy Turner, November 0 Alpha Whiskey, I look at him as my enterprise architect as far as knowing which pieces of the Amazon Web Services system that we need to get everything set up the best way that you see all the data and keep the costs down at a certain level, things like that. And with that, the code, the POTA.app site, when we migrated from POTA.us to the worldwide POTA.app site, that's really a lot of from Whiskey Radio 5 Bravo. Colby Dillian is a mastermind when it comes to code, as you can tell, and we use Vue. VUE is the system that's used for the JavaScript front end that you see with the tiles for the phones. It's very responsive on different platforms. And we don't even need to worry about, do you have an Android? Do you have an Apple device? It all works just straight off the application. And we haven't even got to the logging and that type of ease of use as well. So I've been blessed with really some of the best engineers, innovators in the field that you could possibly ask for. It's unbelievable.
So is your team, are they all volunteers? Are they paid employees? How much time do they actually dedicate toward POTA? Not operating POTA. I'm talking about the administration of the program, the site.
They're all unpaid employees because we're a 501c company, nonprofit, and I don't take a penny from anything. All the donations that we have available, where we take money via Google Pay, Apple Pay, PayPal, Venmo, it goes into a Bank of America account, basically, and it just sits there, and we have a PayPal account that we pay all of our costs, our things that we have to buy over time through that account, and it's all just automatic. And as far as the time is concerned, that's thousands of hours. I mean, I've personally set up the initial program as far as, like, when you're talking about the social media aspect of marketing, entering the data. Like, I had to learn how to use Google Fusion tables back in the day to get all the mapping to work a certain way, and even draw KML polygons, and it's extremely technical. But Google did away with Google Fusion tables, and that's why we had to go with Mapbox, which is another mapping software that we use now. And we're even talking about going to another even better mapping system here in the near future. That's going to be exciting to see. But
switch gears just for a second. When and how did you determine which parks would be part of the program? Was it as simple as taking a list of federal and state parks that are available at a state level, and then how did you add on, for example, in Maine, there are a lot of wildlife management areas. Where did that all come from, and who was responsible for that?
We adopted the same parks that the ARRL already had in their system, and then we looked at some when we added some more, we thought, well, state parks would be an easy addition. And at the time when we first started, that was kind of like all I wanted to do. I didn't see really a need to expand it beyond national and state parks, period. Not even talking about wildlife refuges and all that. Well, what happened was we found out that, of course, lots of states will spend lots of money on parks and have plenty of options, and some states don't spend a lot of money on parks or have very many options. So when you have that happen, where you have a state, or in some states in the West are covered by 80% of a national park, believe it or not, and it's tough because some people, they want numbers of parks, but they don't realize that most of their state is already covered by a park or a cluster of different types of parks. But anyway, certain states didn't have enough compared to others. Like New York, if you look at that state alone, just state parks, it's enormous, the amount of just basic state parks. So then you look at a state like Alabama, I think they have less than 20, 25 compared to hundreds that New York has. And that's where we're like, okay, well, state recreation areas, it's state level, okay. State natural area, okay, it's state level. And that's just where we're trying to keep it manageable, because of course everybody wants their county and city and municipal park to count. But think of the administrative nightmare it would be if we allowed every type of park all over the world to be in the system. It would literally be over quadrillions, I'm sure, if you could fathom that kind of number.
Well, and I also think that if there were too many, it would lose a little bit of appeal. I mean, the idea that, for example, in Maine, I think there's something like 164 parks. So I'd love to be able to activate them all. But if that number was too large, then it would seem unattainable and maybe a little discouraging to go after. But certainly in Maine, the challenges are geography. It didn't take me long to activate most of the parks within about a 60-minute radius from my house. So as we were discussing earlier, and now I really need to get in the car and do overnight trips in order to productively, efficiently activate parks, which is part of the fun, actually. I enjoy that. But yeah, I can see where the numbers could be challenging. And it appears as though now your focus in adding parks is around the world and not in the U.S. and Canada. You're focused on countries one at a time, it seems, and they seem to be coming in pretty quickly. Is that accurate?
We have a hold on new USA parks in POTA unless they are brand spanking new, because we did want to give people a chance to get those awards that they were shooting for. We realize we can't please everybody, because there are the numbers guys that are all about all-time new ones, and they want to be the first here and that type of thing. And then there's also the QSO guys that are just about numbers or number of parks and things like that. So yeah, to try to and it's cool because I've seen a lot of it. Like we had someone work all the entire state of Florida, which was amazing that it was completed. But a huge state like that, or we've already had Missouri and some other larger states completed, Ohio, Indiana, and some of the smaller ones like New Jersey and Delaware are fun because you don't have to spend more than a year or two to get that award. And a lot of us don't have a whole lot of time, like you were saying, full-time job, a family, and your hobby. It all adds up after a while.
So one of the things that I was also intrigued by was a program called Support Your Parks, which I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a quarterly effort to get people to go to the parks.
Correct. To keep it simple for everyone to follow the best way I could think, I wanted to keep it structured because there's always these other contests that are going on, whether it's a CW contest or a FT8 contest or a phone or and it could be sponsored by anywhere. I wanted to be stable and static, where you always knew what the date and what the week was going to be, but we didn't have to worry about scheduling around other people's functions. So for the spring, it's the third full weekend of April. For summer, it's the third full weekend of July, autumn, third full weekend of October, and winter, the third full weekend of January. And it's like that for every year that we've been around since 2017.
So that program feels a lot like a contest, like a outright contest. And as somebody that enjoys contesting, is that an idea that you embrace, or is it more like the field day is not a contest and then everybody winks. How do you and your core group view Support Your Parks? Contest or fun weekend?
It's funny. It's a perfect timing for the perfect question for the perfect timing, because we are at an impasse where we have a lot of people that do like to look at it as a fun, just get together with your friends and family on a weekend and casually get out and operate, get an easy to get award, no big deal. But then you do have your hardcore people that they wanted to have points and they wanted to have more of a structured system. So I have always felt kind of like I'm balancing on a tightrope with this event, because it does feel like people are trying, especially for our summer plaque event. In summer, we actually award plaques to people that are sponsored by lots of different folks that support POTA. And we do give awards out for like the most of something, but we do have 15 to 20 different categories. There's not really a first in POTA. There's not. You can't pull up any dashboard that we have and say, oh, this is the guy that is the best POTA, whatever you want to call it, period, because you can sort it however you want. You can sort it by band, you can sort it by mode, you can sort it by QSOs, you can sort it by unique parks. You can sort the data however you wish. It's more of a game to me than a contest. I know it sounds really close, but we are going to be introducing a new committee this summer for the next summer event, where we're going to have two options. We're going to have, I think, more of a contest-driven, where it's going to be no work bands. It's going to be more of a true contest. And then another version for people that just want to do the same old, get together with family and do that. But we are looking at having an option for a POTA contest. But POTA itself, I've never wanted to be all in one way or another, if that makes any sense to you.
Well, it does make sense. And, not to get too far off the contest idea, because I love it. But one of the things I do like about POTA, everybody seems to be into it for a slightly different reason and slightly different activity. As I said, I personally enjoy getting out of my car, setting up in a park, and working for an hour or a couple hours to make as many contacts as possible. That's what I enjoy. I know that others get their 10 minimum and they're happy to move on to the next park, and they operate that way. People are into different modes, which all that I think is great. I think that they can get out of POTA what they want. Back to the contest, I do think, based upon the activity that I've had, there are a lot of people that definitely have that competitive spirit, and they want to have a pretty aggressive QSO rate. They want to be able to get as many parks or states as possible, so that whole multiplier factor. So I would be really interested in at least one of those quarters becoming more of an official contest, be on the contest calendar, start to see the scores on 3830 scores afterwards. I at the last plaque weekend, I set up just briefly at Mackworth Island, where I've had a lot of success. And, I wasn't expecting to win per se, but it would have been nice to know where I stood compared to other people in Maine or New England or across the country. So I'll be excited to see how that committee moves forward with the contesting angle.
Yeah, get in touch with November 3 Victor Echo Mike, Vance Martin. He has been heading the plaque event for the past 3 or 4 goes that we've been doing it. And it has been potentially growing every year. And just if you have any ideas or anything that you'd like to find out, he'd be definitely the best person to talk to. So
we kind of skipped over the stats, and I know you have some very impressive stats, Jason. I think that year over year, the number I remember is the number of hunters have grown by, I want to say 32%. The number of activators has grown somewhere around 50% year over year just for the past year. Tell me more about what you have from a statistical standpoint.
I did reach out to Tom and Julie Martin about some data that I remember seeing with some interesting jumps and levels of user numbers. And let me pull that up real fast, 1 second.
One of the things that I noted in some of the data you sent me, I think there's somewhere around 750,000 hams in the U.S., give or take. Don't quote me on that. And I think you've had somewhere around 315,000 people participate in POTA to some degree since its inception. So when you think about that number compared to the overall number of hams in the U.S., that's pretty remarkable. And I know that's not an exact science, exact math, but if you look at it as potentially 30 to 35% of all the licensed hams in the U.S. Have participated. And when you look at the licensed hams and know that many of them aren't really active, it becomes even a bigger number.
Plus, I think it's expanding internationally is going to really help us. And the overall total in POTA from inception of, beginning of 2017 is when we started, but we do accept QSOs from all time periods that were, going by the POTA rules. We have 9,456,108 total, and this has been the total numbers from inception. And the just this year alone, we should have 4,053,962.
So with those statistics increasing so rapidly, what are the challenges you and your group are facing, say, in the next 3 to 5 years? What's that look like to you? How do you keep the infrastructure strong so that it accommodates that statistical increase?
Ironically, with Jeremy Turner, November Zero Alpha Whiskey, having the know-how to do the scaling on the back end with the functionality that Colby Dillian WR5B put into place with the more of the front end and the way the systems work together, we're already set to scale astronomically, believe it or not. So I'm honestly not worried as much about the data, those numbers. Where we are now, ironically, is more of automation issues, where I'm now, if you've noticed, we've been automating a lot of our awards. Our radar system, for example, was very popular, and I even love doing it myself. Radar was a South African operator, Eddie Layton, has a system where you go out and you move a lot and do QSOs. You make 5 QSOs, you move, you keep moving, and that's the idea of that program, and I liked it, so I incorporated it and created some awards for POTA. With our old system, we had a way where people could put in data and get the award automatically. Unfortunately, that was not compatible with the new system that we had to create for the scalability, so we had to revert to more of like a rover automated level where you get 5 parks in ETC a day, then you get the first level, and it keeps going from 5, 10, 15, 20, all the way up to, I think it's 30 at this point.
So you weren't concerned about the data scaling, but you had other concerns.
It's not the data now that we're worried about. It's more of the automating all of the different award types that we want to offer for all the countries. For example, to start off, I decided to pull endangered species for plants and animals to put on the awards for in different sets for different reasons, and I want to offer the same thing for Japan. So I had to reach out to the Japanese coordinator and ask, hey, could you put a list together of your preferably endangered, if not at least animals and plants from your prefectures in Japan? And I got a list from them and put the data in there. But we have to do that times 330 for all our DX entities that we're trying to get in. So I've reached out recently to all those guys to say, yeah, it's a lot of work, and I've reached out to all the country admins basically to ask them for their help with putting the list together. I'll get the list and get the photos, and my wife did the initial design, so I'll take that design and try to get the photos right with the correct prefixture titles and type all that stuff in, and then give it to Vance, and he'll do the play around with some of the automation to get the awards to auto print from when they're earned. And after that's in place, it will work, but it is going to be an extremely time-consuming excursion.
well, speaking of automation, I really appreciate the fact that we can upload our own logs now. K1KL was great. Kevin Lyons up here in in our area at helping and assisting if there were any issues. But the fact that I can leave the field and at nighttime simply download the ADIF file, upload it to POTA, everybody gets credit right away. My awards get dinged right away. It's a pretty awesome addition. So again, congratulations. I love that.
No, I appreciate it. I love it too. Have you all already tried the new manual? I'm sorry. Have you already tried the new manual entry log?
I haven't tried that. No, I've been using hammers. And I like it a lot.
It's just an option. You don't have to do this, but if you are interested at all, you just go to POTA.app like you're used to, and when you're signed in, you go down to where you normally do. You normally go and want to upload your logs by dragging or clicking here and finding the logs. So instead of that, what we do have as an option. Now, I would only do this if I'm only doing like a quick 10 or 20, because this is beta. It's beta, but it's available for everyone to try. But if you do leave this page, you will lose your contacts. So keep that in mind. But if you do have a quick 10 where you're just like, hey, I've got a quick, deal out, and I just want to upload real fast, you fill in the basic fields. This is anything that is optional is or recommended. You don't need to put anything there. You just put your time. And it's as simple as you can even click on the numbers to make it quicker. You put the call sign in. I'll put W8TAM in there just to show you what it looks like. And let's say he is at a park and he's at this one, just to show you. You add entry and it'll actually, let's see. Oh, it doesn't like something. Hold on 1 second. I don't think it likes the time or something here.
So Jason, do you see that option evolving so that someone could go to a park and log 100 QSOs in an hour, or is that not really the purpose here?
It is being looked at. It is. I see this being a future option. How quick, I cannot tell you though, unfortunately. But this is a really easy way. The reason why this was read is because it was not in an available time frame that was realistic. So once I corrected the date and the time, it let me put it in here, and I can easily just do like just typing in call signs, and all I got to do is click this number up 1 or 2 for changing a minute, and I can literally sit here all day and put in new entries. And the cool thing is it'll actually show me if someone's already in POTA and some of their statistical information, and if I hover over the top, who's not registered. So it's kind of an easy way to tell who's a POTA member, who's not, things like that. And it's really that easy. And once you've double checked your logs a couple times, you click these 2 buttons and submit it is live, bam, done in 15-20 seconds. It's might take a day to get an award, but that's really how quick it is to get the log for, like, if you're a rover and get your quick 10-20 in. It's really that easy. And if you do have a stable internet connection, especially if you're back home, like if I have a quick log if I do paper logging at home, I come back home and want to do this real fast sitting down, it's so easy to get it in there and get the data in for people so they're not waiting too long. But I tell people, if it's in there about a month or so, that's great. If it's this is all volunteer, so we do what we can to get everything running quickly for everybody.
So on an unrelated note, early shift, is that something new, or did I miss a memo somewhere? I just noticed that on the POTA page just yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that just came out just literally yesterday. We have been discussing lots of issues with, I mentioned the Radar Award was one of those awards where with our new system, it just wasn't compatible, so we had to modify it a bit to make it compatible with the automation and what we were trying to do to make it simpler for the users to have to fill in their own, application every time they got an award. It was kind of crazy, so this is all fully automated. You don't have to fill out anything anymore for Radar. With that said, we also had the Slate Shift Award, and when we initially talked about it, a guy named Brian Martin, really good guy from Missouri, K0ATZ, was the catalyst of thinking of this award. And he was like, we needed a way to entice people to go out and activate parks at night, not just during the day. And I'm like, that's a great idea. And I asked my wife, Katie, she's not a ham, but she designs all our awards for us. I'm like, could you come up with something for the late shift? And she's like, sure. And she came up with this really beautiful, she found this really beautiful picture and found a way to really design a nice looking award for it. And it took off. It's one of our more popular awards, surprisingly, even though when it was initially thought of, it was centered on the United States. Now that we're expanding and growing, it doesn't make sense for someone to make a QSO, during 00 to 12 Zulu and call it late shift if it's in another part of the world. So in order to try to make it where I don't want to lose the award for people to keep them happy, but I do want it to make sense on an international level, what can we do to expand it? So the guys, and kudos to them for finding out an extremely technical way of doing this automatically, but it's by degrees. Don't get me to try to explain all the technical back end of how it does it, but it calculates your local time for you from a certain time period. And after going back and forth with literally 10 to 15 people on options, we decided on a specific time frame. Let me pull that up so I give you the exact one. I don't want to steer you wrong, because we wanted it to make sense for a late shift. And we thought, well, since it's such a popular award, why not have an early shift? So you've got a late shift to entice people to work that, but you also want to get people out early in their local area, because it helps other people in other areas get better DX options that way. So we talked about it, and we decided that we were going to choose for the late shift 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. local time, wherever you are in the world. And then the early shift would be 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. local time, wherever you are in the world. And it is extremely complicated, and I apologize if I confused everybody on the announcement recently on how we track it. But to keep it simple, at the bottom of the announcement, I put just the hours that it counts for. And this doesn't affect the ability to do a new activation when people start at 0000 UTC. That'll still be a new activation day for everybody. It doesn't get affected at all. This only affects the new award systems. And we're not taking any old awards away from anybody. The old award will just be labeled late shift. The new one will have a version 2 by it, so you can tell the difference. And the early shift is just a brand new award that we wanted to offer everybody to get them out, early in their time zone. That's all.
So speaking of other time zones, talk to me about the other countries you're bringing aboard. Where are you seeing some of the most activity?
Okay, so this is just the information of, this is a default date from January to, looks like September the 13th. I'm not sure why that is. Let's see. Let's do October now, right? Or maybe it can't for some reason. We'll try. What is it, the 17th? This is the data of the most active QSOs by an operator. And of course, Canada is going to be extremely active. But we do see, as you can tell, we have a lot of activity in Spain, Dominican Republic, Japan, New Zealand, England, and Poland is also a lot. There's a lot of activity in Poland, but it is growing. And the same thing, and also in France. I've seen a lot of activity start up in France recently as well. And I think you're going to see a lot more activity in Thailand from it being as popular as it is in Japan. I've heard that a lot in Thailand, surprisingly, it's the fastest growing number of hams in any country right now at the moment. I'm not sure what it is, but I've heard it's in Thailand, of all places. So
how are you adding countries? I think you'd mentioned earlier, I don't know if you call it a country coordinator, or do you find the person first that's going to lead the charge, or how do you do that? When we first were starting, if someone was like, hey, I don't see Italy in your system, how do I go about getting that added? I'm like, well, thank you for volunteering to help us with POTA.
this is what we need you to do if you're interested in activating parks. And we thankfully have made it really, really easy for people. We have a really short, literally 10 to 15 minute training session on the console, which is part of the POTA app system that Colby built. And really easy way for my country admins to manipulate parks by deactivating, activating, putting data in, changing latitude and longitude numbers, changing park type, park name. They can do lots of different edits on the fly, and all their changes are literally within 15, 20 seconds. And if they add a new park, it only takes a day for the system to get the park ready for anyone to activate it.
So we've talked a lot about the really spectacular growth that you've experienced. You're going to be growing more. You're adding more countries. You mentioned the core group. It seems obvious to me that you're going to need more help. How do people get involved if they? And I understand the other countries, but if someone wanted to get involved in the U.S., how do they do that? Is there room for them to get involved?
If you're interested in seeing if there's anything particularly open for a certain state, just go to our main page. It's parksontheair.com. And if you look in the center of the page, there will be a section for United States mapping representatives, for example. So if you click on that, it'll expand it, and you can see who I have representing every state of the Union. If there is an opening, it will say open in that area. Right now, at the moment, there are no openings for the United States. However, if you go to country admins of the world, you'll see a list of the 91 specific countries. Now, we do have hundreds of DX entities because sometimes, like Jersey, Guernsey, some of these areas are under the umbrella of a controlling country. So I do let, like, for example, the guy in France will also oversee Corsica, if you're familiar with that. But if you come in here and do not see a country that's in the system, or if you see a country in the system like Taiwan, for example, it's open. We do have someone that is the lead of all my country admins, and that's Matt Mormon. His call sign is Papa Alpha Zero Kilo Golf Bravo, and he would be happy to work with training you and getting you involved with the POTA system.
Do you anticipate any sort of conference, convention, hamfest that's POTA specific in the future? Is that something that's on your list of want to dos?
It has been on the radar, but the only reason why we haven't done something like that yet is because there's already so many get-togethers throughout the year that draw lots of hams. And not being licensed very long, I've never been to Xenia until last year. It was my first time going. And of course, we had to deal with the COVID-19 issues that we've been dealing with. But I decided to go ahead and go and try to represent POTA. We had a booth outside in the field, but it was really a nice area where a lot of people came in, lots of good traffic, and got the word out there. We have lots of great activators that are already great ambassadors for the program that love to talk about POTA and get the word out too. So you'll see them at Hamcation, you'll see them in Yuma for Quartz Fest, you'll see them in Shelby for their huge hamvention they have. I mean, there's lots of people that are asking for helping us, and I do have already a couple people out there that rove with some brochures and some billboards and things like that to do presentations with. So there's so many hamventions already. We haven't had to do one yet, but it is on the radar. The only thing about POTA doing its own hamvention, if you want to call it that, would be the geographic way to do it. Of course, we would have to most likely start in the United States because that's where a lot of us are based. But I would, it'd be hard to pick even in the United States where the best place for everybody to come would be. I think I'm planning on going to Xenia next year already, and I might even go to Hamcation later on if I can get the time to do it. So I think we might play around with that and going to some of the bigger get-togethers first before we do our own event. But it's on the horizon, hopefully, at some point.
Jason, I really appreciate the time you've taken tonight, and I've certainly learned a lot about POTA. I thought I knew quite a bit, but there's a lot more that I hadn't known. So obviously, if people do want to get involved, as you pointed out, they can go to the POTA website, parksontheair.com, and look at whatever openings might be available. I believe there's a donate button on parksontheair.com if people would like to contribute financially. And of course, I'm sure you're looking for hunters and activators all the time. Get involved. But I really appreciate your time today. Thank you, Jason.
No problem at all. I really appreciate you having me on the program, and look forward to doing it again with you maybe sometime in the future.
QRZ Whiskey 1 Delta Echo Delta.
Alpha Golf 2 Sierra.
Alpha Golf 2 Sierra, you're 5x9 at Kilo 8291.
Roger. You're also 5'9", New Jersey.
Thank you for New Jersey, 73 QRZ Whiskey 1 Delta Echo Delta. CQ POTA, CQ POTA, CQ Parks on the Air, Whiskey 1 Delta Echo Delta.